Thank you so much for being here. Just some quick housekeeping things. We are recording this session. We will be providing the recording within a couple days. You'll receive an email that will take you to the part of our blog where we store all of the different webinar recordings. And so you'll be able to find the recording there at that time. I actually have a producer here named Tony. He's going to be manning the chat, answering questions as we talk. So if you see me talking, but also answering questions, that's how that's happening. But today's session is really a workshop. It's an intensive kind of clinical workshop where you can follow along at home. You can work alongside, maybe pin me to the corner, pin me to a little sidebar, and you can work next door. This is going to be very much a very practical session of like literally how to do the different things within the Beehive platform. So, if you're looking for something that's more of like an overview of like all the different features and just like quick hits and just very kind of high level, that's not going to be what this session is. This is going to be very step by step. We're not going to go too deep into all the details, but we are going to show you literally how to get started, work within the editor, use all the different features within the editor, use the different features that set up the different features that we offer within the different plans. But yeah, with that said, we're ready to get started. So the first thing I will say is that we have a trial, 30-day trial. I think most folks, as long as you don't choose that you want to start with the free version, you will now be pushed to join the free trial. But if you have not started the free trial, if on your dashboard in the bottom corner, it says like start trial, if you want to get the most out of this session, you're going to want to hit that button and start that trial. So it's free, no credit card needed, no obligation at all. It just gives you and unlocks all of the features we're going to discuss today. The other thing to flag ahead of time is that even with that trial, we don't unlock the monetization tools because we don't want to end up in a situation where during the trial, maybe there's some money that collects in the monetization tools. And then once the trial ends, you lose access to it. No one has fun in that case. And so we've made the decision to just put that behind the paid plan. Your trial ran out before you could use it. You will not miss out. In theory, you will have had those things. Maybe Tony, we can add a day to her trial. I don't know if there's a way to do DM, but yeah, if you shoot an email over to tony@beehiiv.com, he can just jump into the admin. He can add a day. I think that should be pretty easy. Tony, do you know how to do that? Yeah, it's just in the admin tool. You'll just do the right click in the menu and then manage trial, and you can just add an extra day. If you have trouble with that, just ping me. If I'm talking, I'm not talking to myself. Tony can hear me and see me. You guys can't see or hear Tony, so I'm not schizophrenic over here. I am talking to a real person, not the clouds. All right, cool. So I'm going to do things a little bit differently today with today's session. I've done 3 of these previously, so this is the 4th. I'm getting a hang of how these work. Yes, John's been to some of our other webinars. He knows Tony's behind the curtain. He's the Wizard of Oz. I'm working on, this is actually a little bit of like a behind the scenes thing. You guys are the first folks publicly outside of Beehive to hear about this, but I'm working on some resources for creators. We're going to use these for different ads and for our existing users to offer them as a kind of way to get started with the platform more easily. But one of the things we have a lot of people say is that, they come to us wanting to start a newsletter. They see famous newsletters like Morning Brew, Skim, Axios's newsletter, New York Times. There's thousands of newsletters out there, TLDR, 1440, whatever. And they want to know, how can I make a newsletter like that? Or maybe they see that newsletter and they want to do one for their own industry. And so what I've been putting together is basically like quick start templates that you can literally just copy paste into your editor that will replicate the structure of these very famous newsletters. Now, this is a kind of a very manual process. Once you get the doc, you'll have to copy and paste it over. We're actually releasing a brand new web builder in January. And so when we launch that, we actually plan to bring this like templating process into the platform. So you won't even have to copy and paste anything. You'll just have a gallery of like, I want to create a newsletter. Here's the different styles. You can just click it and it'll automatically populate the structure. But because it's not live yet, we don't wait. We just like to ship week after week. And so I took it upon myself to start outlining these. So today we're going to do things a little bit differently. I'm going to use one of these guides that I've set up in Notion. I'm going to copy and paste it into the editor. And using that, I'm going to basically do my typical spiel of like, this is how you can get the most out of the editor. And then from there, we'll move on to some of the other details from there. So I think it'll be a little bit more illustrative, but bear with me. So with that, I'm going to get started and jump right in. First step, we're going to start here. This is where, if you're a new user, this is a brand new account. Started this one up this morning. We're going to call it the Slim, named coincidentally after maybe a famous newsletter that people have heard of. but we're going to basically replicate the skim newsletter. Not the content, not violating any copyrights, but we are going to do the structure so that if you wanted to basically launch a newsletter similar to the skim, you'd be able to in just a couple steps. And so we have that here. This is a completely new account. The only thing I've done is literally set the URL, which is going to be the-slim@beehiiv.com. And that's just literally part of the process of creating the account. So this will be virtually identical to what a user you might see when you created your account. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to jump into, I have an agenda here. I'm going to cover basically getting started in the editor, writing your first post, doing the publishing settings, setting understand the difference between posts and emails, setting all the details for those, setting your audiences and whatnot. And once we get done that, we're going to say, okay, we're ready to send, but there's some things we need to do before we actually get to first send. We want to go to the settings, set up our settings, and then we'll go from settings to different, the design features, and then from design features to the actual growth features and different things like that. Starting out, this is what your account will look like. The first thing we're going to do is go into the start writing button. I'm just going to open up our editor. So the editor is really kind of the central experience of Beehive. It's really kind of the crown jewel across what we've built. It's very, very powerful, very intuitive, and is very, very flexible in terms of the types of content you can create, the engaging and interactive experiences that you can build. And it was really the source of kind of everything that we've built at Beehive. When our founding team and our CEO, Tyler, were thinking about starting Beehive, the concept really came from the fact that when he was at Morning Brew, growing Morning Brew, he would basically have people come to him and say, hey, we saw that you launched this newsletter. It had a great referral program in it. What tool do you use? What ESP? Do you guys use MailChimp? Do you guys use SailThrough? Whoever. And they did use one of those, but he would tell them, no, like that feature is not part of the platform. We literally built that ourselves. They had an engineering team and they would build these features, and they would always have people from the industry come and say, hey, like what tool are you using for that? That was super cool. I want to add that to my newsletter. But of course, because they built it, it wasn't available on the market. And so the whole thesis was, what if there was a platform that had all of these tools built into it so that you could produce a professional looking newsletter without all of the engineering resources, without all of the venture capital. And so the result of that is this editor experience where you can come in here, you can hit the forward space, and you have access to all of these different widgets that are all very, very powerful and create engaging, interactive experiences, ones that can make you money, ones that can just surprise and delight and impress and grow your newsletter. Starting here, I'm just going to grab some lorem ipsum text just to get started. This is literally just fake nonsense that you can use to just generate placeholder. If I go in here and I copy paste, you're going to see this is just how content looks like. You can type, you can do whatever, very, very simple. This is pretty straightforward. This is not anything impressive. So once you come in here and you do the /, you get access to this whole palette. We're split into 4 different sections. So the basics are going to be things that everybody has access to. They're mostly visual settings. So things like bulleted lists, images, block quotes. These are all the formatting type of things that come with the newsletter. Next thing is headings. So headings are very similar to the basics. It's just there's so many of them and they're very commonly used. So we separated them out. From there, we have embed. Blue Sky is coming soon if you're a Blue Sky user. I think we also might have an embed for Threads coming soon as well. But we have all of these social media embeds, so you can drop these posts in. They look just like they would be embedded on the web and very, very professional looking. Great for engagement, great for getting people back to social media. We have dynamic tags. So these are going to be things where you can like source. It'll put a little 1 in superscript and it'll link down to whatever source you're linking to at the bottom. And then, of course, we have our premium features down here. So you can see an enumerated list of all these. So RSS ingestion, recommendations, boosts, polls, and so forth. So from here, it's as simple as you can start typing in. So if I want to drop an image, we make it super easy. Just hit / image, and it's going to basically shorten this list and get you where you want to be, making it very, very quick to, once you become a power user, as you use the platform more. If you're drafting, very, very simple to really get in and just start writing content. Now, one thing you'll notice here is that there's not a lot of design options. This just looks like a blank page. And if I hit preview, it's going to look like this. But there's no design features within the editor, and that's by design. We've taken the experience of writing and we've taken the experience of designing, and we've completely separated them. And that's because we find that when you're using some of the other platforms that provide email services, they don't separate the process. And generally, you have a kind of combination of writing the email, but at the same time having to worry about the design, changing the padding, the sizing, all these different things. And that takes away from the writing experience. We, have a team of our entire team are writers, and we've found that it's much more productive to be able to have this page where you just put the content down and then worry about the design somewhere else. And that somewhere else is a part of the experience that we'll show in a little bit that allows you to set the design once and then you never touch it again. So not only does it separate the mental cognitive load, but it also makes your life way easier because you set it one time and then you never have to worry about it again unless you want to make those tweaks to increase or enhance the design down the road. If, for example, you do want to have something that does differ from your set design system, and we'll go into that in a few minutes, you can highlight any kind of text within the editor and come in here and you get this menu where you can modify. So you have the normal stuff, bold, italics, underline, strike through, but and stuff like links, but really cool. You can actually add things like a highlight. So if I wanted to highlight something in yellow, I could just pick yellow and I could choose this nice shade of yellow. And then when I set that color, it's actually going to highlight this text, which is cool. It gives it, obviously makes it stand out and is something that you can do. If you want to add superscript text, if you are writing scientifically and you want to add some equations or whatever, we have superscript and subtext. You can obviously change the header from right here. You don't actually have to go back into the palette to do that. You can turn this into a list. You can turn this into a quote. You could turn this into a formatted code block. These are the typical settings around justification. And then in coming in here, if you do have very specific things where for effect and for impact, you want to change the font size, for example, or you want to change or you want to change the text color on a one-off basis, you can come in here and do that. I don't recommend you using this for your entire newsletter just because it gets incredibly tedious if you were to design using this, because it's not meant for that. The design for your overall newsletter is found somewhere else. This is just basically you have a spot where, for whatever reason, you want to make a very kind of one-off spot changes. You can come in here and do that. If you're on the trial and once you're on the paid plans, you also have these features around commenting and AI enhancement. So we believe that human written content is the best content, that there is too much kind of AI generated stuff it's just not hard. There's no barrier to that. And it's just so it creates a lot of noise. So with our process, what we've done is we've integrated AI in a way that really augments and improves or extends that human touch. And so in that way, we have these features where you can come in here and you can say, hey, I want to make my writing, I want to shorten it, I want to make it a little bit longer, I want to simplify it, or I want to change the tone of voice. You can also come in here and if you want to translate it, so say you want to translate something into any of these languages, you can do that. You can fix grammar and spelling. You can just say, hey, fix all those things. Or if you hit writer's block, you get halfway through your sentence, you're like, man, I don't really know how to land the plane. You could ask it to help complete the sentence. So there's not much in here that's there's nothing here where it's hey, write my entire newsletter for me. We're not a fan of that approach, but there are some things in here that can help make the process easier, make your life simpler, make your life easier, make your end product better, but really keeping it fundamentally yours. So as we go through this process, I told you I was going to show you how some of this works in real life. I have here a Notion document where I have taken a recent edition of the Skim and basically identified the design settings that we'll have to set in the newsletter design section. We'll get to that in a minute. And then created an outline where all we have to do is highlight all of this and then copy and paste it over into our editor here. And basically we're going to have the outline of the Skim. So if I come in here and I create an image, replace from image library, let's go to Unsplash and we'll do news. Let's see what comes up when I hit news. Perfect. And we can just use this. In the Skim, their section 1 is politics. They have a headline. They have the body content related to that. I don't actually still have the lorem ipsum. And then they have basically related news. They have their second section, and they can repeat that a couple times. They have another headline. They have an audience survey, an audience poll, recommendation, a TV show, and then a audience engagement game at the end. So as we release these, essentially all you'd have to do if you wanted to create something like the Skim is come in here and copy and paste over that structure, and you have essentially your version of the Skim ready to go. The copy and paste from Notion actually includes some of these line breaks, which is why I'm deleting them. When you come in here, you can then see it start to take shape. Obviously, it's not very pretty right now because there's no design settings set up, and we obviously haven't added the content. But if we were to go over here to the example, basically where I say body copy, this is body copy. It's the body message. Images, we have a polls tool, so you can do a poll just like this. You add an image and then add a poll beneath it. Easy. We have surveys and survey forms, so you can have a survey form, link it to your content right here. Obviously, this is just more body content, headlines and stuff. Within a couple clicks, we've just recreated one of the most popular, most successful newsletters in the world. And so what it goes to show is that it's not, that is the promise of Beehive. That is the value of Beehive. And we're going to get into how we can make it actually look much more similar than just the structure. And so we'll do that in a few minutes. Once you have your content written, you have the section up here where you can have your headline, subtitle, a thumbnail. So this is going to show up on the website, and if you share it on social. So every Beehive account comes with a website where you can host your content. You can share that on social media. Very, very useful for basically growing the newsletter. One of our differentiators, our websites are very, very fast. They're very optimized for social or for search engines to be able to find that content. And we're investing very, very heavily in that web experience with the release of our forthcoming release of our new web builder. It really blends those lines, and I'll get into kind of how you can differentiate between those in a moment. So add the thumbnail. That's going to be what shows up on the website. And then content tags are going to be what show up when you are can help filter the newsletter. So real quick, in case, and I'm sure most of you have seen a Beehive newsletter before, this is another example of one that I've created that's already built out. But this would be the thumbnail image. This is one example of how content tags can help you sort. Obviously, you can come down here and you can click on these content tags. They're going to filter your archive. You come in here and you have the newsletter. So this also has a bunch of the features, so columns and headers, polls, and whatnot here. But this is going to be like what the end state can look like. We have this post, we've written it, we have this content. So now we're ready to send. Yep, I'm about to jump into that. EGW, I'm EJW, my initials. So I don't know. Maybe it's like shortened for your short version of your name, but it's close. So once we're ready, we have the content written, we've added a thumbnail, we've added content tags, we're ready to send. So we're gonna hit this next button at the top. You can also click directly on these buttons. The next step is to identify the audience. So by default, recommend is probably the right word, but usually we would say if you're writing a newsletter, it could be valuable to publish it to the web as well so that people can see your work in a more flexible way. So when you send an email, the only people who are ever going to see that, if you only send an email, are the email recipients, which then precludes you from being able to share with new folks unless they forward the email to someone. We recommend with the newsletters posting to web and posting to email. So in this interface, depending on what you select here is going to be who it sends to. So right now it's not publishing to anyone. This would not work because it'd say, hey, you haven't made the selection of where you want to send it. If I wanted to send to only the email audience, I would click here. If I only wanted to post to web, maybe I'm creating more of a blog post that I want to reference in the future. You can use Beehive without the newsletter part purely as a blog by just clicking this. But if I wanted to send it to both, I would click both of these. Now, one variation on this is that say I want to send to only a specific part of my list. So we'll get into segmentation and how you do that, but you can actually create sub lists from your main list and send specifically to them. Or maybe you want to exclude a certain number of people or a certain list from your audience. You can do that here. So I don't have any segments set up in this view, but say you want to send to one group, you would include them here, and then that would show you how many subscribers you are sending to. Sorry, you don't click that. But if you include an audience, this email audience with an update to show how many users you're going to send to, maybe you select all free subscribers, but you select an exclusion, this number would update to represent this number minus your exclusion. Of course, for web audience, there's fewer settings because you can't necessarily restrict because it's on the web, it's public. So we have those settings there. From there, because we've selected both, we're going to have access to email and web settings for the send. So by default, in our Compose tab, we created this headline and we didn't set a subtitle, but we'll say this is a subtitle, just so it's listed here. For the skim is just one step back. For the skim, they have a headline, but they actually don't have a subtitle. So what we would do here, and this might be something you want to do, is we can actually hide the visibility of this in the email. So this is only going to now show this is a headline. So just one other way that you can do it. They also don't have a byline, so this is already hidden, but you can show or hide the byline. If I show this, for example, and I go to the email, this is what the byline looks like, and this is just the settings that I have right now for how it's displayed, but it's gonna show up like that. So we're gonna continue to hide the byline, and so we're gonna go back to these email settings. By default, we're gonna pull in that title and subtitle as your subject line and preview text of the email. But you don't have to keep that. You can make it whatever you want. If you do this, it's going to reset it to sync with the post title. But if you want to change it to be totally different than what shows up on the web, that is totally fine. You can do that here. These socials and likes and comments, these are email settings. So again, if we go back to this preview, you can see we have these social share links here. This is because we have it published to the web. If you don't publish to the web, you can't share to social. But if we want to hide that, for example, we can also show or hide likes and comments. So if I have likes and comments turned on, these will create buttons where I haven't turned on comments yet for this publication, but when I do, comments will show up here. And this is the symbol for. So if somebody clicks this, it'll take them to the web version and it will add a like to that post. I'm going to keep them both turned off because our example has that turned off. And I'm just going to move this back over here so it's easier to access. And we're here. Yeah, what's up? Yeah, sure. So the TikTok embed integrations are super simple. Let's go to the Beehive Instagram, for example. I can go here and I'm going to go to Beehive. We're just going to grab one of our recent posts. So these are the pinned posts. Let's go to this one. This is one of the we posted a play on the Spotify Wrapped trend. So I grab this. I can grab the whole thing. I don't know what this is, so I'm not doing that. But if I come in here, all I have to do is hit Control V. I just have to paste, and it's going to automatically recognize it's from Instagram, and it's going to visualize it like this. And this works across all of those other ones. So if you have a YouTube video, all you have to do is just take the URL and just paste it directly in the editor, and it's going to show up. The same thing with X. Once we offer Threads and Blue Sky, same thing there. User clicks this, is going to take them to the Instagram account and allow them to. It's going to take them directly to the post and allow them to interact. So sorry, the question was, or Tony had flagged to me that there were a lot of questions around how to do embeds. Rachel, LinkedIn doesn't have an embed API or like a way to do that. So we don't, there's no LinkedIn embeds, but that's something we should take up with LinkedIn to help us visualize. But yeah, Tony had said there are people asking about how embeds work and wanted to see an example. So there's an example there. Tony, did that kind of encapsulate what people are asking? Cool, I'm getting thumbs up there. Cool, moving along. Moving over to the web settings. So because I selected a web audience here, we're going to have web settings. So in this case, we can select what we want the slug for the URL to be. We can change the thumbnail. So like say we had the thumbnail for the main post that we want for the website. If we want a different one, we can post that here. We can change the advanced email capture just means the experience when people come to the website, they're going to have the option, or you have the option of setting some options for email collection. So if someone comes from social, they're not a subscriber yet. If you have gated turned on, it's going to actually have a little pop-up it comes up from the bottom that says, you must be subscribed to view this post. And all they have to do is put their email in to view the post. And so it's a way you can grow your subscriber list. The pop-up is a little bit less restrictive in that it's going to show up when the user scrolls 50% down the page, shows up once per 7 days. The settings there are not like tunable. That's something we plan to add in the future. But right now it's once every 7 days, 50% down the page. You can customize the language and stuff like that on the pop-up. That's another way you can get people subscribing. You can set settings around comments. So maybe you only want your paid subscribers to be able to comment. That's maybe as a feature of your paid plan. We'll get into that. We have an integration with 11 Labs, which is the leading text-to-voice AI company. So this doesn't work on email because email doesn't allow for the JavaScript widgets that we need to be able to implement. But if you turn this on, your web version will have a widget at the top that says that users can click and they can actually listen to the newsletter. You can even select, if you're not tired of my voice by the end of it, my voice is here. Otherwise, you can use all of these other built-in ones. I think our CEO is here too. Tyler might be somewhere. Maybe it's not. No, I guess maybe it's not. Maybe he was. Maybe he removed it. But you can select the voices here, and that will generate a voice version of your newsletter. If you're a marketer, if you're an SEO, someone who's into search engine optimization, You have all of the tools available here to really stand out in that search results page. You can do everything you would expect to be able to do. Obviously, at the top, we were able to change the slug. You have the title of the post by default is the H1, and then the meta title, meta description. You can see how it looks here. And if you want to change the thumbnail, say you want a different thumbnail for social media because it's going to perform better, you can actually change the details of the content of how it shows up on social media and get really granular with that. So search engines tend to disincentivize like more clickbait, where it's like something, maybe you ask a question that's a little bit shocking. Search engines tend to disincentivize that, but social media networks, that actually is can be a great approach, because social media is all about that engagement. So you can actually set potentially different headlines and descriptions and stuff to show up across Meta and X. These are just different ways in which the different tools handle Open Graph and the metadata. If you have a post that maybe you want to hide from your main archive, you don't want it to show up on the main list of pages, but you do want people to access it maybe through like a direct URL, you can hide it from the feed. Alternatively, if you want to feature it, you can click this. So in terms of these features, if we go back to this, these are the featured posts. They show up above the main archive. And then this is the main archive feed, where all of the posts that you publish to web are going to show up by default. But say there was one, maybe I didn't want this one to show up, I could select hide on this one. All of these settings, you can come back and revisit them at any time. You're not tied to them. So if you change your mind, you can always come back and edit the post. Once you've set up all these settings, we've drafted the article or your post, and then we have gotten ready and we've set all the send settings. So we're almost ready to send. However, because we just set up this account, there's going to be a couple of things we want to do. We want to pause for a second before we actually get ready to hit send. That's going to take us to the publication settings that we set in the settings area of the site. So to start, you're going to have a selection of workspace settings. So this is going to be, there's a little bit of a background here, where when you create an account, the structure is you're a user, and by creating an account, you become the owner of a workspace, which is like the overall company. And then your workspace is going to have one newsletter or publication. We refer to them as publications, but that's going to be your newsletter. So the workspace settings, if you are on a paid plan, you can actually have multiple newsletters within your account. So say you want to have like the Slim, I want to create another one for, you can just see all the different ones I have here. So, you can create multiple newsletters, manage them all through one account. The workspace settings are going to dictate all of the overarching settings of your kind of company level settings. And then the publication settings are going to be listed here. We also have a few personal settings. So you can come in here and set your name, your bio, your personal links, and this will show up on the authors page if you choose to deploy an authors page. But going back to the settings here, we're going to start with these kind of high level settings. We have the workspace name. So this could be the name of your company. It can also be the name of your newsletter if they're the same thing. You can set a global address for the footer of your newsletters. These are required by law to have an address. So by default, we have it be the Beehive headquarters, but you're encouraged to set your own company address and what have you. And you can see and manage all of the newsletters that are within this account. Obviously, we have a ton. It'll look like when you start out, it'll just have that one, but then here's the option for adding a new publication. Under team, if you do have a team that you work with, we have a ton of features for working collaboratively. So, I don't think I covered it, but we'll go back here for 1 second. In the posts, we actually have the ability to do two things. One, you'll see this little icon up here. This just shows that I'm in the editor. We actually have basically like Google Docs-esque collaboration features. So you can have multiple people working in the newsletter at the same time. It's not going to cause problems with like different changes. You can actually see them typing in real time if somebody else is in here collaborating with you. And then we also have the ability to do comments. I use this all the time when I'm doing my internal emails around growth and marketing, when I'm sending them to the team. When I have my direct reports, I need what they've been working on in their reports. I actually go in here and I outline the email, but then I come in here and say, hey, at Tony, I need your stuff. And so I can tag him here. This is a comment. And then he gets this. And then we're able to basically go through that way. I think it disappeared because this is a new publication that he might not be a part of specifically. But from there, they can reply to those comments. They can add their feedback, and then we can check them off just like you can do with Google Docs. One other thing here, version history. If you create a version of your newsletter, you can change it substantially and you want to go back and you say, I really actually like the old version, you can come back here in this version history. and that you can restore past versions, very similar to Google Docs as well. And then lastly, if we say we wanted to come in here, we created this outline, we know we want to do something that's similar to the skim, we could actually go in here and save this as a template. And this would be like the skim outline. And so now, I should have covered this before, but when I go to write, if I start a new post, I can either start a blank draft or I can go to use a template, and it's going to show me this skim outline. And so I can use this template. It's going to create a brand new newsletter, but it's going to have all of this stuff preset. And so you don't have to go back and do all the copy and pasting or go back to a past edition, copy and paste. You can actually have it work directly from here. So if I go back to our posts, you can now see I have 2 of them. They're going to be identical, but there's this. A lot of questions here. I don't know, Tony, I think you're probably handling some of them, but if there's anything I need to address, let me know. Okay, cool. John, your question about CSS may be fixed because we actually have a very robust design suite where typically CSS isn't needed. We do have a way for you to inject your own CSS though and work with the different elements in there. Cool. Sweet. So where was I? I was at settings. We jumped back for collaboration because we were talking about teams. So say you have a team you're working with, you basically have a bunch of granularity in how you add people. So I could add anybody by email. You can then set the permission level. So you can say, I only want them to have access to the publication. You can select, if you have multiple publications, the specific publication, give them workspace access. And then you have contributor, member, and admin. So admin's going to have full access, same as like an owner. Member is going to have many of the access, but much of the publication, but not any of like the sensitive stuff like billing, exporting data, API stuff, and so forth. And then contributor is going to be the most limited. It's only going to have access to be able to write posts and draft and write automations. They're not going to be able to publish. They're not going to be able to like access any sensitive personal information. And so that's really great if you're working with like a writer that you find is like a freelancer or whatever. You can give them access without actually giving them too much access to data. Cool. So yeah, John, you can definitely you can just keep the default of like the Beehive address. That's fine. It just CAN spam laws require you to put an address there. Or if you have like a PO box for like a newsletter, you can do a PO box if you have a company or something like that. But you can also just keep it as the Beehive one. So billing and plan, when it's time to upgrade, when you're ready to go, you can come in here. You can click, this will look a little bit different because you'll be on either a trial or a free plan, but you can go here to upgrade. It'll show you the different plans and the different levels of subscribers. You can choose the one that's right for you. If you ever need to come up back and update your billing information, you can do so right here. And then our platform integrates with 10,000 apps. Any tool with an API, with either an API or webhook functionality, we can integrate with through tools like Zapier and Make. And we also have our own API that's available for free. And then we also have a webhook functionality that is available for if you're collaborating and working across, you're building your stack and you're integrating Beehive within maybe a bigger CRM or a third-party website or an app or something, anything in between. We have documentation on all of this through both developers.beehive.com as well as our knowledge base found at www.beehive.com/support. We also have a ton of videos, over 400, I think almost 500 videos on our YouTube channel, 12,000 subscribers, a ton of great content there for pretty much everything I've covered. So whether it's the knowledge base, documentation, or YouTube, you can answer just about any functionality question you might have. So moving into the actual settings of the newsletter, where we get to some of the specifics. So publication name is going to be the name of the newsletter. You can add a description here, daily news. I'm going to actually upload a logo real quick. I created this one earlier so that we can start to see how this kind of takes shape. Again, based a little bit off of the skim. We have default thumbnail preview. So this is going to be if you don't add a thumbnail, by default, it's going to be like a Beehive logo. But if you do want to have your logo, have your brand colors, this is just going to take the place if you don't add a thumbnail explicitly. Publication tags are super helpful for us when we are doing things like the ad network. And if you're trying to find and gain discoverability through our recommendations network. So adding whatever relevant content tags here, we have a bunch of them. I'll just add these 2 for news and lifestyle. Default language, this is going to be the language of all of like the default like buttons and stuff that we deploy automatically on the subscriber side. So say you're in Germany and you want to deploy a newsletter. If you change this, the default language across the customer facing side of the app and internally will change to German and so forth. Default time zone. This is going to be the subscribe button text on your forms and such. you wanted to change it to make it a little bit more specific to your business. Say you're running a newsletter for your local PTA or investor newsletter, and you don't want anybody to be able to see the contents of your newsletter except for subscribers. You can actually make your publication private. This is going to mean that only people who are subscribed can access it. And so that subscription would happen through you uploading a list of allowed people. If you want people to be able to request approval to join, you can require subscriber approval. This would allow people to submit their email, but they won't be able to see any content until you explicitly approve their request to join. And then if you're on our Max plan, we have the feature where you can remove like the Powered by Beehive badge, and that can be done right here. If you're a marketer, UTM parameters are super important for tracking. We deploy them automatically to all of the web-based links. So you can see whether you're driving traffic to a third-party site or folks are sending traffic to you. You can change the defaults. It's on by default. We use the UTM source as your URL for your Beehive site. Medium is newsletter, and the campaign is going to be the name of your post. If you wanted to change that here, you can change those as you see fit. Moving to the email settings. When you show up in the inbox, you may not want to show up as just like that raw sender email. So you can change this to something like the slim. In this case, we change that. This is how it's going to show up to the user in their inbox. And then you can create a reply to address. So in this case, I want users to actually be able to reply to me. By default, this will not be a monitored inbox, but if you wanted to make this like make this my business email, make this ej@beehive.com. So when they hit that reply to button, it's going to come to my inbox. If you want to change the name for the copyright, say you're running a newsletter, but the company is different than the newsletter and you want the copyright to be attributed to your company, you can do that here. You can specifically change the address here if it's different than the global setting. And then we have a couple preset emails that we send on your behalf when your users are doing things. Welcome email, every account, regardless of plan, gets a welcome email that sends a one email autoresponder. That can be worked out here. It's just the same text editor, subject line, preview line. And then once you turn that on, anybody who subscribes will receive that email. The best practice for opt-ins is to have a double opt-in, which means you're collecting explicit consent. In some places like California and in Europe, it's required. But this is where when somebody submits their email, they're going to get an email saying, hey, you just subscribed to the Slim. Please click this button to verify that you want to be part of this. You want to be part of this email list. This is what it looks like by default. You can change this by editing this email. Lastly, with double opt-ins, we actually have something called Smart Nudge. This means that if somebody does sign up, they don't respond to the double opt-in within 48 hours, we're going to actually send them just a little nudge saying, hey, didn't hear from you. Do you still want to subscribe to this newsletter? And then if they don't respond, they'll still be in the pending state. And hopefully, though, they see the second one. By default, if you have double opt-in turned on, new subscribers will be set to the state pending versus active or inactive. Active means that they're able to receive newsletters. Inactive is the same thing as unsubscribed. Pending means that they're waiting for that active subscription confirmation. Some notes on that. Anybody who comes in through the referral program, which we'll get into, anybody who comes in through boosts, both of those use cases, we require the double opt-in for both your protection in terms of referrals. Otherwise, people could just put fake emails in and scam your referral program. And for boosts, it's a way that we verify that they're real users because there's money involved in that one. So that's emails. If you have an existing newsletter and you're part of one of these platforms, you're coming from one of these platforms, we actually have a one-click import ability. Unfortunately, the importer really works with these platforms specifically. But if you are working on those, you can do content import. Subscriber imports, by default, you'll be able to import 10 subscribers. When you click, this is a little bit different, obviously, because this is our house account. But if you didn't need to import more than 10 subscribers and up to 10,000, we use Stripe verification to ensure that we have proper verification of users and they're not scammers, spammers, or phishers. And once you complete that very simple ID verification, you'll have up to 10,000 for your import. If you need more than 10,000, we're happy to support that. We actually have an expedited support queue where you're just going to open the request form. You give us a little bit of information about where you're coming from, how you obtain that opt-in, and how many, what you need your limit raised to, and we can handle that. You'll be able to see your list of historic imports right here. say you ever need to export your data, whether you're doing analysis or, God forbid, you're moving platforms, we don't lock any of the data that we collect or that you import behind any kind of a wall. So you're free to export at any time. All of your subscribers with all of their data, all of your posts, you can take them and go elsewhere. We like to kind of act from the perspective of, we want to prove ourselves and prove that we're the best out there. We don't need to lock you into our platform to keep you to stay. If you want to set up a custom domain, you can do so here. So a custom domain would be, right now, this is set to theslim.beehive.com. Say you buy a domain and you want to attach it to this newsletter, you can do so within this workflow. I'm not going to go super far into it, but the instructions here will walk you through how to do that. We partner with a company called Entry to handle all of the DNS settings. So once you get all of this set up, if you've bought your domain from any of the main kind of most common, like 90% of the domain sellers out there, there's like a one or two click way that you can verify your account with those hosting companies, and we will set all of the proper DNS settings. The exception is DMARC, because that can have it has dramatic impacts if you depending on the policy that you set. As part of the process, we actually have a link to our DMARC tool where you can basically set your DMARC settings, and then we have the instructions on how you go into your DNS settings and add that record for DMARC. Tony, if you wouldn't mind, maybe you can drop a link around like what DMARC is, why it's important. I think that support article explains everything and has the link to the DMARC tool. Webhooks, if you're more developer focused or you want to integrate across other tools, you can activate webhooks within this interface here. Payment accounts, once you start getting into some of like the paid features, you're going to have to attach a Stripe account. And so this is going to be where you manage those Stripe accounts for making payments and receiving payments. And then lastly, all of our accounts have the ability to deploy an RSS feed so that your subscribers can more easily ingest and consume your content. And then if you are on our Max plan, we have the ability to ingest content from an external RSS feed and feed that into your articles. So say you have Time Magazine, for example, uses this, where they are publishing content and they want that content to then be fed into their newsletter. So they have an RSS feed that from their published content, they're able to select and just have the content fed right into their newsletter, pre-populating it more or less with content. So there's some documentation. We can show some videos. Again, Tony, maybe we can drop information around that. Go ahead. Yeah, so the sub-import process is pretty straightforward. If you're coming from another platform, you're just going to export your existing subs. Generally, it's going to be an Excel file or a CSV file. You upload that here. If you have custom fields or personal data about those users that you want to bring over, this process will allow you to create, in our parlance, we call them custom fields. We'll get into that in a minute, but it'll allow you to create and map the custom fields for the personal data. We really walk you through all of this. I actually don't have a CSV ready, but you upload the CSV, it'll detect all the fields that are in that CSV. And then from there, you can go. Muriel, to answer your question, you don't need to warm up the Beehive domain. We send like 500 million, or maybe it's like 1 billion emails a month. It's growing so quickly, the numbers are always out of date. So the main Beehive domain, if you're on the shared domain by default, which you are by default, no warming necessary. If you do import a custom domain, we actually handle all that warming process on our end. So we have a process called smart warming where we will automatically parse that traffic at your list and send a small portion to from your custom domain, the rest from the shared domain. And then the next time you send, we expand the percentage of your list that's sending from your custom domain based on best practices in order to fully warm that list up so that you don't have any kind of deliverability issues. So that covers all of these features, or all of the settings. The last thing we'll get into before we get into the actual features of the platform is this design section. So this is probably what a lot of people are waiting for. We have a bunch of content on this. This is something that comes up with a lot of questions come up from here. So we're going to focus mostly on the newsletter builder because the website builder, I will go over some of that in high level detail, but we won't be designing the site. One, because it just is a little bit more in depth, and two, secondary to a lot of people's needs, and three, this is going to be changing soon. So focusing on the newsletter builder and caveating that we actually are also improving this experience to make it a little bit more UX, a better user experience. But when we talked about at the beginning, changing the look and feel of your newsletter and you never having to touch it again. So this is where you're going to do that. And I'm going to actually refer to this template that I came up with because I have some of these settings already preset. So if we wanted to make this skim newsletter. We're going to set some settings. So we're going to make, by default, the background inside and out is white. So we actually have to change that. We actually are going to change this inner margin because, as we can see from here, like the text is actually quite thin. If you can see that this is the width of the page, the actual content is pretty thin. So we're going to just maybe bump that to 50. The default is 600 across. So this will bring it down to 550 on each side, make it a little bit thinner. From here, body text settings, this is going to be the content here. They use Arial for their this kind of content. And we're going to make it, yeah, it's already 16 font. I believe that's what I have right down here, right? So look here. Body text, I didn't update that. This is Arial for this one. George is the other one I was doing. So Arial, and this is 16-point font, and it's black. Cool. So by default, we're going to just change the text color to black. It's 16 font, space between paragraphs. We're going to do this. They actually don't do any on the bottom, but it's 16 in front of it. The links that they use here are this color that I've listed here. And there's underlined, but not italic. So we're going to undo the italic. We're going to keep it underlined, and we're going to make these colors this. Cool. So it's starting to come together. So from here, we have header text. I don't typically use H1s because I focus on SEO for most of the posts. So H1s, there should only be one, and we default it to be the top one. If you're only seeing by email, it doesn't really matter, and you can do whatever you want. So I'm going to skip H1. I'm going to start with H2. They use a font that's similar to Playfair Display. So we're going to go down to Playfair Display. We're going to make that bold, and the font size is 28. They do 24 spacing in front. They do none beneath, and the color is just plain black. Great. So we can start to see this coming together here. So heading 3, they also use, this is going to be, so they have, this is that H2. And then the H3 is going to be this right here. This is going to be bold, and it's going to be Arial, and it's going to be 16 font. And we're going to put what in front of it. I know there was some stuff. It was going to be Arial 3 normal, bold. Normal was the regular stuff. 16 space between elements, top and bottom. Top is 32, bottom is none. So 32, great. Oh, sorry, this is body text. I'm not editing body text yet. We're doing still, this is the top and bottom, 32. Cool. Sorry, I'm like confusing myself as I go through here. So this is also black, but this is basically how you're going to go through. We don't have any other header text to set for this example. Body text is what I was referring to. We already set this to be normal, changed all that, changed the underline. From there, email header, this is going to be where your content at the top sits. So for this one, we're going to make it the same as the H2. We're going to make it black. Yeah, so this isn't referring to your social sharing. This would be what the user would see to share to their socials. On web, I don't believe we have the option to remove them on web because most users want to promote that shareability. I know that does come up from time to time, but we haven't prioritized that, to be completely honest. The social share icons for your own socials are actually going to be shown here. And these will be based on the ones that you set within your publication settings. So within the settings, we'll go into where those are found in a few minutes, but based on whichever ones that you enter, say you only put in YouTube, only YouTube's going to show up down here. And you can also hide those as well if you'd like. So yeah, we got the header settings. So this is the title of your newsletter. The subtitle will come next. Do this in real time just to see how this goes. And then I'm going to make that back to 16. Cool. The byline is going to be here. So if you want to change the font color of the byline, the accent color is going to be that underline. You can do that. Again, you can hide this byline if you don't want it. We just kind of show everything here so that you can see what you can expect with all of these different elements. For this one specifically, we've done all of this. I did the email header, and then we've done the background. So this is pretty much all of the things that this newsletter is going to contain. So we won't go into too much more depth, but just know that for all of the elements here, these are these content breaks. If your newsletter, you do want to have like a break that's like a line break. Buttons are going to be down here. Those are ways that user can click through. Actually, I'm going to update this button. I'm going to make the background color that dark color. We're going to make it Arial. We'll make it 16 between them. And that's fine with that current thing. Images, though, you can see how images are going to be displayed, how links, if you share links that are not social media links. This is how they'll show up. Tables, we could support tables. We support 3 different types of block quotes. So these can be really helpful for just adding some visual interest to your newsletter. I think that covers all of these. Specifically, we had a question about CSS and there. So one thing I'm going to do is I'm going to upload the other logo that I created, kind of this flat one. For the email, if you set a logo here, the email version will have this at the top of it. So let's make this a little bit bigger, 30. If we want to add a link to it, we could. And then this is where that custom CSS is going to go. For the footer, by default, this is what the footer is going to look like. We can change the settings here. So maybe we want to make the font, we want it to match everything else. We can make the font black. We can make the background white. So this matches. So now we're going to see that it looks like that. Social links, we're going to make that white, and we'll make the icon color dark. So they show up like that. And then from custom content, if we wanted to go more in depth and do much more with this footer, you can do that by clicking that. It's going to open up this new screen that's going to actually have like a full editor. It's not going to have all of the widgets because certainly some of the widgets don't make sense to have in the footer. But you can turn on this custom footer content, add whatever content you want here. Very similar to like the existing editor. You can see you can add most of them. It's just about all of the different widgets, and then preview what it's look like. And when you're done, you can hit save, and that's going to basically add a custom footer. Thing to know about the footer, it's going to show up across the bottom of all of your emails. So you're going to want to make sure that all of your emails have the, you're going to want to make sure that the footer content has whatever you're comfortable with showing across all of your emails. Tony, I am seeing in the chat, Rebecca had an issue with the invite. I don't know. Okay, sure. So I'm hearing there's a question about domains and subdomains. Tony, can you give me that question? Oh, Stu, actually, I can see it. I can see it. Let's say I have domain.com, but I already have a site with a shop and other content. I want to use Beehive for the newsletter. So we don't support domain masking in that way. We do support the subdomain method. So like that's how you would set up the newsletter. You'd set it up as a subdomain as like newsletter.domain.com. If you follow the instructions, like there's no different instructions. When you set it, when you go to the custom domain settings, you would literally just put in as the custom domain newsletter.domain.com or whatever that website is, and just follow those instructions. They won't impact anything that you have across the other part of the site. It only pertains to that specific subdomain that you're setting up. Awesome. So moving on, so we just did the footer, we've done some of the design stuff. So just to take a step back and see what we've done, let's jump into this example that we created before. So before it was like using all the defaults, it wasn't particularly differentiated. And, oh, did I not save those settings? Got to save them. I thought for a second I might have not saved any of them and I was going to cry. Not actually, but that would have been, okay, cool. So now that we've done all this, we can see now that this is starting to take shape. We have these subheadings, these subheadlines. We can change this to, this actually should be a 2, 2, 2. And these hotkeys work. So you can do command, it's command option 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what I'm doing here. So we can see here, we have this. Oh, no, I did the wrong ones here. It's the headline is regular stuff. The headline is that just regular bold. We want to do the section. Section is the H3. The headline is the H2. There we go. So we got body. This is just bold, regular content. Now, if we go back here, we have what's starting to come together. You can start to see if you can imagine like additional images. You can imagine like the additional body copy. This is going to look more or less identical to the one that is run by the Skim. So you can see like this is the headline here, and then the intro. That is going to look a little bit different because we're viewing the web version of the newsletter here, but we're getting really close. And so you can see within, obviously from 0 to like less than an hour or just about an hour in, we now have a newsletter that is going to be as performant in terms of deliverability, look visually very similar to a multi-million-dollar newsletter. And so now it comes the part around using the additional features that we have on the platform to drive engagement, grow your list, potentially monetize it if you'd like. So from here, I'm going to jump into kind of the more of the daily driver types of features that we cover in the platform. So once you start building your list, you're going to be able to see all of your subscribers. And actually for this one, I'll jump into this one. I'm going to stop sharing for a second so I can just set it up so I don't share any PII. I'm going to just jump into a newsletter that has existing users so I can just show you my own email within this newsletter. So if I go to, we're going to go to the Vacation Voyeur. That's like the travel newsletter that I've started. I come in here and I'll do goal. All right, so I'll share my screen again. Great. So once you have subscribers, they'll show up in this view here. You can click on the subscriber to be able to view the specific details about that user. You can see the posts that they've interacted with and been sent, automations they've engaged with, polls they've engaged with, any referral activity, other emails that we send them, events and billing information. It's going to show you the top line information about their open rate and click-through rate. And on the side here, you can see if you need to share with them, if they reach out to you saying, hey, like what's my referral link, Stripe link, subscriber link, whatever. We include all of these details around how they were acquired here. So you can see exactly how they signed up to your list, any custom data that you've collected about them through surveys or through an import is listed here. We also have a tagging system, which I'll show in just a moment, that can do that. So if you're used to tagging subscribers and grouping your list with tags, you can do that within this view. So this is just from the subscribers tab. You see, we were right here. Now we have custom fields. This is where you're going to set the custom data. Tags then are a way to like group subscribers, and you can use those groupings in segmentation. And then preferences, if you have some sort of preference center where you allow users to perhaps, your default is you're sending 3 times a week, but you want to allow users the preference to only receive once a week, you can set up a preference center where they can choose that here. Tony, if you would, could you drop the documentation to the preference center? I'm not going to go into like the details there because it uses a couple different features, but it's very straightforward to set up. Also, we have a link here, easy to import subscribers directly from this screen. If you do something like a live event and you need to import subscribers after kind of your main account setup. Segments are how you can sub-segment your list. So you can see here that I was using Instagram to acquire some subscribers, got 167 through Instagram. I can see that their open rate is 36%, click-through rate is unsubscribe rate, and such. If I go in here to actually edit this, and this is actually going to be the same view that is going to show up when you create the segment. So the segment types, there's 3 different types. There's manual, which means you're going to upload a list similar to the import, and it's just a different way to import subscribers, but the difference being that those users will always be part of that segment. Static is going to basically, whatever criteria you set, it's going to pull that list at one point in time and won't update, and then dynamic is going to update over time so that it's an up-to-date list of the subscribers based on your criteria. The criteria you can use to segment your users is really incredibly flexible. This is one of the most powerful parts of the platform, in that really more or less any interaction that users take with you or through the newsletter or website, you can create a segment around. So whether it's attributes around the users, from that existing list of giant things, this is the attribute list. It's also quite substantial. You can also go and how people have engaged with your newsletters, opens, clicks, unique clicks, all kinds of things, specific emails. So how people have interacted with specific emails, clicked on specific links, engaged with automations, and so forth. How to use segments. Not that it would require an entire webinar to show how to use it, because it's very straightforward on how it's used. But in terms of the use cases are really quite infinite, and you could spend an hour just coming up with all the different segments that you could potentially create. It's if you can think of it, you can create a segment around it, which then allows you to include those users in Ascend, exclude them from Ascend. You can monitor performance of a specific segment. And then the last part, the other big part, is that there's a bunch of different bulk actions that you can take on these users. So if I click into here, you can see that from this list, I can do a bunch of stuff. I can export them, do a quick or full export, unsubscribe them in bulk, delete them in bulk, gift paid subscriptions, apply tags, or add them to automations. And so with that, it's a great transition. Automations are the marketing automation aspect of Beehive. So this is going to be how you can set up more lifecycle type of emails. So the most kind of basic use case is if you wanted to set up a welcome series that's more substantial than just one autoresponder. In this case, you could come in and you could create a sequence where, maybe when a user subscribes, they get the welcome email. And in this case, you would use this. You would turn off the welcome email through the settings, but you could use this as the initial welcome email. And then maybe you say, do a time delay of 2-3 days, and then we're going to send them another email after that. So you could just add here and then send email. But you can do a lot more than just sending emails. You can basically do like a split. You can say, like, if a user has taken a specific action based on the segment that they're in, split them true or false. You could wait until, say you only want to send them email at like 9 a.m. You don't want it to just be if they subscribed in the middle of the night, their email gets sent in the middle of the night. You can wait until a weekday, weekend, whatever. And you can also enroll them in other automation. So you could actually have these like daisy chained together in order to create like more complex experiences. This is a very specific and very simple example of the trigger here being, all of these are kicked off by a trigger. I probably should have started with that. In this case, the trigger is when a user signs up, they're going to be added into this automation. However, there are a bunch of different triggers that we have that I'll open up a new example in a second and show you some of those. But in addition to the things that we saw in that list, these are also, there's a menu here that you can just drag and drop and pull in there. So you can update their subscription. So if you want to unsubscribe them, subscribe them. Great for list cleaning. We have a whole webinar we did on like automations that might be valuable. I think we dropped the link to all of our, if you want to send a webhook to an external tool, one of the most powerful ways to integrate Beehive across the platform. So there's two different ways. So there's two different ways to do this. One would be through that CSS. If you view the source, I think we use the typical things like a button in terms of the HTML element, but I will jump to that in 1 second to show you how you can. I did miss that. I didn't go over that specific widget, but that is, I've seen a couple of things come up with that. I'll do that in a second. So starting from scratch with an automation, the first thing you're going to do is add this trigger. And so from this list, you can see all of the different things that can trigger, that can start people off in these sequences. So whether they signed up, email submission. So this would be like, the difference between these is like you can have users submit their email more than once using our embed forms, which we'll show in a minute. But like say you have a lead magnet, but they're already subscribed, but you want somebody who submits their email to receive a asset that you've created, you can use the email submitted one instead of the signed up. We have the survey tools, which we'll get into, but when they submit a survey, when they submit a poll response, if they refer a user, if they're added or removed from a segment, when they upgrade or downgrade from a paid plan, and then pretty flexibly by API. So you can say like if they've done something in another tool, add them to an interaction here. And this is like incredibly powerful. It's like really what makes this tool really infinitely flexible. Going back 1 second to that button question, let's just open up a new post here in the editor. One of the widgets that we have is a HTML snippet. So for anything that we don't support natively through the editor, you can actually embed whatever you want. This can accept any kind of HTML. If the HTML snippet requires JavaScript to operate, this is a little bit advanced, so feel free if this is a little bit too complicated to ignore. But if this is you, if the HTML snippet from another tool, like it is embed or whatever, requires some JavaScript, you would take, we have an integration with Google Tag Manager. You would implement Google Tag Manager, insert the JavaScript in that tag, in a tag in Google Tag Manager, and then you have the HTML component just listed right here. But for things like buttons and any kind of element that you might want to code on a custom basis, you can just copy and paste those elements here. Because of the robustness of the actual editor itself and like the design settings, we don't support, for a couple of different reasons, we don't support pure HTML imports. One is that most imports are incredibly inefficient and are not optimized for email. And so they're just very heavyweight. We spend a lot of time and resources to make sure that the templates and the way that they're visualized and the way that they're generated are as lightweight as possible and as performant as possible and look the same across every email platform. And simply tools like BeeFree and others, they just don't necessarily have that depth of like looking great across every platform. And even if you did go through that process, we have so many custom tools, like many of the widgets that I mentioned, that don't integrate with like HTML, just pure HTML templates. And so in that way, you'd be missing out on most of the features that actually make the platform so valuable. And so these snippets are really more, if you have an element that's like very, very custom that is not able to be inserted by an image or text-based, you can add whatever HTML elements you want here. So like a chart example would be something like a charter. It's a great newsletter that does a lot of visualizations. The Google Tag Manager workaround is that JavaScript doesn't work in email. So JavaScript that's not a Beehive limitation, that's just a limitation of email. And so because JavaScript doesn't work in email, we don't support JavaScript within the editor, but JavaScript does work on web. So if this would require JavaScript, it's not going to show up when the user opens their email. It's just going to be blank space and just going to be skipped. but on the website it would work. And that's not a Beehive limitation. That's just a limitation of like email as a medium. So hopefully that answers the question. We are coming down a little bit short on time. So I'm going to run through some of these other features a little bit quickly, but here we get to polls is probably one of my favorite features. I think that running satisfaction polls at the very least is one of the most powerful things you can do. So very easily we are able to generate these polls that you basically can drive engagement, get you better placement in the inbox, give users a sense of inclusion, interactivity with your newsletter. So this one that I have, you can see at the bottom here, what did you think of this, this edition's newsletter? I also use another one specific to each newsletter about the content. So it's like, what unique features make the gardens here especially notable? This is going to be a trivia style quiz, whereas this one's going to be a voting style quiz. And so the difference between both of those is that the trivia one, when they click it, it's going to show them the right answer. A voting style is going to just say, thanks for your submission. Do you want to leave more feedback or like any additional information? And so you can see the emails in which these posts are used and then the aggregate results here. You can export all those results. These come out really nicely so they can be visualized using any kind of like visualization tool. They're very flexible there. Surveys are our form tool. So I have a welcome survey that users get. And so if I go here, I can show you the questions that are asked. Take a second to load. I forget how extensive this one is. I have some that are quite extensive. So 2 windows open. But when this loads, come on. Why is my okay? Oh, it started to load. It was there. Okay, we'll let that load. The last thing, subscribe forms. If you do have a third-party website and you want to embed a subscribe form on your third-party website, or you have a partner, you can generate a subscribe form here. Specifically, really useful for third-party sites is what we call the slim embed, which is just going to be the field here. These are going to have a little bit more styling, have a little bit more content. Still can be very valuable for landing pages and stuff, but I'd say the one that gets the most use is the slim embed version here. Perfect. So we have the editor experience. It looks very similar to the automations builder, but in this case, for each of these questions, it's a very typical form experience. You can ask the question. Every answer is going to be associated with a custom field for a customer. So that data is going to be saved to the customer. It's free response. So they can put whatever they want in, but we have things like multiple choice. There are going to be different options here. And there's a bunch of other ones I just use, like advertising-based questions. So it's like, what's your first name, gender, and then like, where's your dream destination? This helps me come up with topics for future editions. This is helpful for advertisers to be able to say, my newsletter is X% man, X% woman, whatever. And then first name is a way that I can actually use in the editor to personalize greetings and stuff like that by using custom fields. The notation for that would be, I didn't cover this again. I should probably have covered a couple more things when I was in the editor. It's just there's so many things and I like to get to everything. If I go like this, I can do first underscore name and then put a type and have a default as a friend. So now if I go to the preview and I type in my name or my email address, I can simulate as that user, this user subscriber. So it's going to replace that with EJ. This also works in the preview. So if you, next to preview, there's this list. If you want to send a draft link, so say you're working with a team or a boss or something, you want to send them your draft, you can do that with this link. Otherwise, if you want to see how the email is going to look in your inbox, you can actually send a test email to yourself, and that same simulation feature is going to work like this. So you just put the simulated subscriber in, and then the test email you send is going to have that user's information dynamically populated, so you can test dynamic stuff. Running quickly through our growth tools, we have referral program. This is what we launched with initially. You can basically set milestones so that when your users refer other users, they can get rewarded for that. I have that set up here so you can see how it looks visually. Actually, we're gonna have to go into there because users aren't signed in on web, it's gonna show up in the email version. So I'm just gonna go to a previous one that I did and show you the preview of the email. So we go down here and then share vacation voyeur. You currently have 0 referrals. Click here to share. So this is gonna automatically show them or populate their unique referral link. If they share that, they're going to get counted in that referral program. And in that case, for my referral program, I have rewards set for 1, 3, 5, 10. And so by following the instructions here, you'd basically go to, this is how it's going to look using the default one. I actually have the custom set, but you can see 3 referrals is a sticker, 10 referrals is a hat, 20 is a bag, 1 is an access of the premium version of the newsletter. But in here, this is where you're going to set and edit things. So this would be the reward. So I'm saying like what the reward is, and then you can set up the milestone email. So this is going to be the email that they get when they reach that level, and so forth. So we also have a lot of documentation about that in our knowledge base and in videos. Recommendations is going to be a way that you can grow your subscribers by partnering with other newsletters, so that when users subscribe, there's going to be a field that pops up that says, would you like to recommend this other newsletter? So I can go here to recommendations, and it's going to show up here. These are one of the paid features called boosts. So if somebody subscribes and then selects that they want to also subscribe to these, I'm going to get paid for these. These are going to be the organic recommendations down here. And I'll cover what that means a little bit more in depth in a minute. Magic links are great. These are, if you want to run a promotion or a partnership with a newsletter that's not on Beehive, you can give them this magic link. They can put it into their email as long as they're using one of these like 14 different platforms. When they send their newsletter, it's going to actually replace the recipient's email with this snippet right here. And so when they click that link, they're going to be subscribe to your newsletter. It's a very seamless way to gain subscribers and do cross promotions. And then boosts is one of our paid features. I'll get into that in a second. So then we have monetize. Yeah, I guess the last thing would be our subscriber reports. This is going to be, we call this 3D analytics. It's a very, very powerful analytics engine that you can really go very in depth with all of your subscriber information. So this is going to be subscriber data, where they came from, how they're engaging, and so forth. Post report, this is going to show you how your posts specifically have performed. Again, let me put that back to 3 months. You can see this. You can actually break down by the subject line, by the different edition. You can see the web links and web interactions, along with the email interactions, web performance, and it all breaks down. All of these different widgets are fully exportable. So if you want to do the deeper data analytics to it, you can download them. But for power users and people who are growing, this is kind of gold and really invaluable information to be able to mine. Lastly, clicks reports. If you're doing some sort of advertising, not through our ad network, because we have our own reporting tools for our ad network, but if you're doing any kind of like partnerships or anything like that, a lot of times being able to see a breakdown of like the different links that were clicked can be really, really helpful. And so you can see the link click report down here. In the last few minutes, I do want to cover the monetization features really quickly. So we have the most developed ad network among email platforms on the market. So when you're a part of our paid plans, we'll send you opportunities from name brand companies. A few of them are listed on our website. But ones that you've heard of: Netflix, HubSpot, Hims, BetterHelp, a whole bunch. Do for publishers. You can see kind of a list of the ones here: Masterworks, Babbel, Brooklyn, and these aren't unknown names. These aren't low quality brands. These are kind of household names that your subscribers are going to have known about, and it adds some credibility. Also, as a way for you to make some money from your newsletter. We offer CPM and CPC based payouts depending on the different offers. The details are included when you receive an offer, along with like when it needs to run and so forth. So we allow you to schedule it. Pick a version. There's usually several different versions. So you can pick the one that fits within your newsletter the easiest and go from there. Boost. Yeah. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. Sounds good. Okay, sure. So we'll include resource. So Tony is saying there's a lot of questions. We want to make sure that we get to them and are doing this in a timely manner. So we will drop features around the Boost marketplace. You can monetize your newsletter through those recommendations. You can also grow your newsletter through those recommendations as well by making offers. And we have a very, very robust marketplace for this. So just to see that real quick, you can explore offers. These are real offers. You apply, you can tell them why you're a good fit, and then actually make real money for just referring subscribers to these other newsletters. And lastly, with paid subscriptions, you can monetize by giving users the ability to sign up for like a premium subscription, very similar to something like Memberful or a Patreon or Gumroad, in that you can set up these different paid programs and offer specific perks to people who want to pay to get your content. You can go deeper in that if you guys have questions about those things. I'm sure Tony will add them to the chat queue, but I will jump into answering some of these questions. And I appreciate you guys' time and attention. There's so much we cover, and in some ways I sometimes feel like 90 minutes isn't enough. And so we're always happy to answer more questions. Obviously, you can always reach out to us or there's a bunch of ways that you can find us on social media, our email, or within the paid Beehive community if you're a paying Beehive user. Questions here. Does Beehive get picked up by Google News as long as we're approved publisher in Google News? Yes, absolutely. We are optimized to be able to be picked up by Google News. We have several newsletters that do use Google News as a way to pick up to get traffic. And so you definitely can do that. Question, do users have to verify their email so they don't put in a fake email address? How does that work? So we verify every email that comes into the system to ensure that it's a real email, that it's deliverable, and that the inbox is a real inbox. So there is that level of verification. There are ways that users can come around that. If you have like 5 different emails, you could put those in. Those are real emails. Those are deliverable. And so that's a case where something like a double opt-in would be helpful, because then unless they're going through and selecting all of those, then they wouldn't count. But the challenge is it's very hard to, if it's a real email, it can be difficult to do that. We do have some safeguards in place to prevent that. So for example, if somebody signs up on your publication, multiple people don't use the same computer in the same session. So we have safeguards and prevent, so that if you have a newsletter, somebody puts in their email, they can't just put in another email. We can detect that they've already entered an email and they can't enter a second one, because why would you do that? So in that way, there is a bunch of protections in place to prevent that spam. Another question, can I explain titles, subtitles, and authors and having the ability to remove them? Also, if we create a survey and want to edit it, will we still have to delete and create a new survey as part of the welcome process? So the first part of the question, titles, subtitles, and authors. So just in terms of being able to remove them. So all of the different widgets that we have in here have visibility settings. So you can come in here and show visibility. You can toggle those visibility settings so that they show on email, website, whatever. Same thing with these. They're a little bit more limited because the title is so important, but you can just show and hide these. Web posts always have to have a title. There's not a way to get rid of it, because that'd be a really weird experience if somebody came to an article and didn't have a title. Authors can be removed completely, though. You can have it just be from your publication, and by doing that, it's going to disappear. And to add an author, I would just go here and do that. Multiple RSS feeds that currently feed a weekly email. Wanted to replicate in HubSpot. Yes, you can. Yeah, you can sync HubSpot users using our API and something like Make and Zapier, or you can develop it. If you're a developer, you can do that yourself, but Make and Zapier work really well for that. We also support multiple RSS feeds for that ingestion. Sorry, the question, I think I covered the question. It was we have multiple RSS feeds currently that feed into a weekly email. Wanted to replicate in HubSpot, but they did not support multiple feeds. Do you? We do. We also manage all of our context in HubSpot. Can we sync users from HubSpot into Beehive? Yes, you can sync anybody from any platform into Beehive through one of those connections, those methods. Is what shows up on the website page for posts the same as what people get in the email? Is there a way to write in the email but give the people see a longer version of a story on the website post or similar to Morning Brew? Yes. So you can write content specifically for the web, and what they do is they will write a post that goes on the web that might be the longer post, and then they only post that to the web. And then in your newsletter, you would just write the summary and say, click here to read the full content, and that would take them to the full blog post or full post on the website. In that case, you might not actually publish the entire newsletter to the web. You might only publish the newsletter to email, but then have your web portion be more of these extended articles and more of a traditional news site. UTMs, how do they work? How we handle links from paid ads, et cetera. So UTMs are used to track subscribers. By default, if you use UTM in your ads, we collect them and show you them either in segmentation or on the user record. Highly recommend using UTM parameters for anybody. It's literally, there's a bunch of resources, Tony, if you could drop one around what UTM parameters are. They're just a way for you to track where users come from. So right now, this one didn't have any UTM parameters, so it's going to come through as direct. But if I had a source is Facebook and medium is ads, then it would show up here, and you'd be able to create segments to say, show me all the users who came from ads, for example. What legal policies needed to be added to the newsletter? None. We cover all of that through our own site and the deployment of our main site. You can see on your subscribe page, it has a link to privacy policy. I didn't get into these website things, but in the settings for a website, there's a bunch of interesting things. So for pixels, if you're running ads, this is where you'll add your ad pixels, Google Tag Manager. This is what I was referring to in terms of deploying Google Tag Manager. So we have all of these native tracking pixels. We have some for the website of things, some settings around SEO. This is where you're going to add those social links. So at the bottom of your newsletter and on your site, if you include links to your various social pages, this is what's going to show up for your publication. You can set global email capture rules. So in this case, all of my publications on the web have a pop-up, and then I've edited the copy here. This is what's going to show up on the pop-up. Comments, you can turn them on and off from here. We actually have the option to deploy a mobile app for all of your users. So once a user signs in, they'll get a little thing on Android or iOS saying, do you want to add this to your home screen as an app? That's a really cool feature that then they get push notifications whenever you publish a new post or somebody responds to a comment that they've left. The reason why I came here originally was if you are in the EU or California and you need CCPA or GDPR compliance, this is where you can turn that on. And so in this case, this would turn on the cookie banner that would block tracking from deploying until they accept those terms. And then this is where you could then turn on like a custom terms of service or privacy policy that you can customize for the specific location that you're in. The only other thing that I think is pretty important to cover is the sign up flow section. So once you've set up all of these different things, you've set up recommendations, you've set up your your survey, and you've set it to be a welcome survey. You've set up your paid program. We have what's called this like sign up flow, which means like if somebody goes to your site, and I know we're a little bit over time, so I appreciate you sticking with me. They come to your site, they sign up, they see this screen. Whether or not they sign up and they join through these recommendations or paid recommendations, they hit continue. Oh, I'm not doing it through the normal flow, so I just went through it. So if I went through the actual subscribe flow, which means I entered my email, I go to the recommendations page. The next page I would hit is this upgrade page because I've set it to be recommendations page. I'm sorry, the next thing I would hit is the welcome survey. So my survey. After the survey, I'd go to the upgrade page, which is this. And then I have a couple different publications. And so we have an experience where users can, like, you can give them the option to sign up to other publications that you run. So you could do that through recommendations and just have them do it at that point. But this is kind of a more bespoke experience to say, hey, like, these aren't just other newsletters that you should join because I'm recommending them. Like, these are other of my own publications that you might be interested in joining. Those are all obviously optional. You can just toggle them on and off. And then at the end of this flow, if you want to send them somewhere special, if you have a custom page, we have this infrastructure to build custom pages. So these are just going to be standalone pages that you can put whatever content on your site. So if you want to have like an about page or talk about your journey of how you started this newsletter, you can put whatever content you want here. This is going to live as its own page that you can add to the nav bar and whatever. But like, you can take any page that you want. It could even be off of your own newsletter if you have a third-party site, and you can set that as the link that they get sent to at the end of the sign-up flow. So I think we have some documentation around sign-up flow as well. I just wanted to cover that because that's like central to like the experience of signing in. I apologize for a little bit of like, I don't want to say time mismanagement. It's very tight to fit everything in. So I think I went a little bit too long when I was doing the setup of the kind of example of our template. So I'll take that learning for next time. But I really appreciate so many people sticking with us 5 minutes past. I don't know if there's more questions. I assume that Tony would be dropping them in the studio chat, and I don't see them there, but I see 54 comments that I have not read, which is really cool to see. Yeah, cool. So Tony's saying last call for questions. If you have any more, drop them in. We can also include any Q&A that we didn't get to. If there are more in the post that we make for this recording session. The last thing I will say is that we have, I'll stop sharing for 1 second. One of the most powerful parts about our community is the Beehive Hive. We call it the Hive. It is our private community of Beehive publishers that is basically a community of more than 3,000, so 3,142 active paying Beehive customers. So if you enjoyed this, if this was useful, the Hive is the place for you. This is just since like yesterday, we have like dozens of messages that have come through. We have things like community AMAs that we do from time to time with successful newsletter publishers, the team here at Beehive. There's channels for asking and seeking and accepting cross promotions, design questions, email 101, general Beehive questions, growth, how to, introductions, milestones to celebrate wins, monetization tips. You can get people to tear down your newsletter and say, hey, like, give me feedback on how to make this better. If you're a partner, if you're part of our partner program, recommend you joining that. It's a very powerful way you can also make some money by sharing Beehive. Once you experience it, you can see how powerful it is. And if you become one of our super fans, you can make money by sharing Beehive. We split revenue 50-50 with anybody that you refer to us. Anybody you refer to us, we will split the revenue from that 50-50 with you for a year. So it can be very, very lucrative. And we also have a competition every quarter that the top affiliate, we send them on a 7-day vacation for two to an exotic location. So for this quarter, Q4 2024, we're going to send a person to Cabo for a week. Like I said, airfare included, hotel stay included. Only thing we don't send you with is spending money. So it's quite nice, and we enjoy doing that. We always have the partners who win that have a great time. If you have product feedback for us, there's also a place to do that here, and then random socials. There's all kinds of stuff in here. So if you enjoyed this, the Hive is an incredible resource where you can extend the conversation and keep joining with us. Otherwise, do you have to be a paid member to be an affiliate? No, you can be a free user. All users are open to the partner program. And with that, I want to give a quick thank you to Tony, who's been working overtime in the chat to collect all these questions. He's the man in the sky, the man behind the curtain. But I wouldn't be able to do this nearly as well without him, because you guys would be talking, I'd be taking breaks and stuff like that. So everybody give him a little round of applause, and thank you, both you who are in the chat today and you who are watching this recording down the road. You are what makes this so special and so valuable. If it weren't for all of you, we wouldn't be doing this, because we wouldn't just be talking to a blank screen in a blank room. And so you guys are what really makes this special. I really appreciate your time here. Would love to connect with you guys on LinkedIn or Twitter, EJ_Beehive, or Edward White on LinkedIn. I'm in a tuxedo. Connect with us. We love connecting with users. Our platform has grown so quickly and has become such a force in this industry because we listen to our users. We build the features our users want. We build the features that are valuable to our users. And we are constantly shipping. There's no code freezes at our company because it's coming up to the holidays. We still have at least one more major feature release, maybe two, but we have one scheduled for next week. And then we might actually have another one before Christmas. And so that would make probably, 26, or there's 52 weeks in the year. We've probably done 20 plus feature updates this year, which are main features. It's not just, we changed the font of a text or something. These are new features, new value adding stuff that we're releasing, and we're very, very proud of that fact. So you're new. We're very happy to have you. We're blessed to have your business, and we hope that we can deliver on the promises. We will deliver on the promises that we've made to you. And just my appreciation from the bottom of my heart. Thank you, and have a great day. And we look forward to connecting with you. Talk to you all soon. See you in the Hive. See you on socials. Have a great day.